Hey, I'm Stephen Glosser.
And I'm Megan Pikert.
Welcome to the Going Somewhere podcast.
A podcast for anyone who finds themselves in the ambiguous adventure of young adulthood.
A season that's marked by uncertainty, change, love, heartbreak, and a whole lot of big decisions.
Join us for some real conversations as we dig into what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus in this beautiful yet complicated season of life.
We're so glad you're here, and we'd love to have you join our little Going Somewhere podcast community. Follow us on Instagram at goingsomewhere.podcast and join the conversation.
We're all going somewhere. We might as well go there together.
Thanks for listening. Let's jump into today's episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Going Somewhere podcast, episode number 87.
Let's go, 87.
87. We're closing in on 100. It's still possible this year.
It is possible. It stresses me out a little bit though, because we can't miss too many.
We have a teeny tiny little wiggle room, but we've been good.
Yeah.
We've been good. We're bringing the podcast weekly. That was the goal. So look at us.
Look at us.
And hopefully the last couple, those were fun to record. The ones about college, and I've had some fun conversations about that. Just about how, one, just the reminiscing part of it. I've posted a few pictures, and I wrote a newsletter this week, and I included another picture from my Bison days, my college days, and it sparked some good, fun conversations.
Yep, the picture, I almost replied to your newsletter because Steve Pavik's hair, one of your best friends, is pretty crazy. Full afro.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he keeps it a little tamer now, but it's pretty much the same. I mean, it could, yeah. It's great. And my hair was pretty long back then. That was probably like that was probably my junior year, or maybe my sophomore year, and so I'd figured out a few things.
Since then?
Well, since then, but before, remember the freshman pictures were gnarly. And so by that point, I at least kind of honed in on like, all right, I can hold it together a little bit.
And you've had that same haircut ever since.
I have. Also, I had a shaving incident. I don't know if you noticed it. Yeah.
No, I didn't notice it at all.
I had like the guard on it, and then just for like a split moment, I turned it the wrong way, and I took a spot short.
Well, I can't tell. So
I know that's what Taylor said too. She's like, you can tell. My baby face. I'm scared of it.
I've only seen it one time, and I think I never want to see it again.
And you've never seen it in real life,
right?
You've just seen photos.
That's
it's
true.
been a long time. I've been a bearded boy for a long time now, but yeah.
Welcome to the Going Somewhere podcast.
Yeah, welcome. I hope you're enjoying this this introduction. I know by the time that you hear this, Megan will have had Blancconf, which is crazy.
Crazy.
So right now you are in week of ramp up.
Yeah, we are 3 days away from our women's conference. So we are in the thick of it, the last minute things. Today I am steaming all of our merch. So you get pristine, unwrinkled clothing at our conference, and we're really proud of that. So
wow.
Yep. But yeah, I'm excited. It'll be fun. And then last night I went with a friend and we went and looked at puppies.
Yep.
And because she's thinking about buying a dog, and I think that's going to be now my new rhythm is event week. I'm going to take one of the nights and I'm going to go look at puppies because I had the best time, and I was like, this is exactly what I needed. My cup is filled. I'm no longer I just checked out because you're with 4 dogs that are just climbing on you, having fun. So it was a blast.
The dogs look pretty cute too.
Yeah, they're cute.
What's your rule though for dog?
I have to wait till Kevin dies.
Yep.
Yeah, or I don't live with roommates, whichever one comes first.
Yeah, you've just been, such a clutch house and dog sitter when we've had to go, and Kevin can't handle other dogs. And so he's 15, just hang on a little longer. Then you can get one and then we'll dog sit. We would love that.
Right.
That would be like the best ever. But you just have to wait.
Yeah. I can wait. It's a practice in patience and discipline and saving money. So
amazing. We had our Fully Alive event last night, and it went really well. It was awesome. Susie Larson and the worship team and stuff. But we had, I had one of my craziest event moments ever.
I'm so ready. The suspense.
I know I didn't tell you before because I wanted to be able to tell you now. So yeah, everything was going smooth. We had it was worship, and so the worship leaders, they're from Emmanuel Christian Center in Minneapolis, John Carlos and Gabriella. They were amazing. And so they're leading worship. We're all standing, and then the sheriff comes like speed walking down the center aisle and goes up onto like the second step and like motions for John Carlos to come down to him. And this is during worship. So he stops singing and he leans in to like listen to him. And he's like pointing at us, like, go talk to them, go talk to them. And the sheriff's just like, no. And so then I go up and he said, we need a nurse. And so I was like, okay. And so Nicole, we have a bunch of nurses there. Like that's part of what Valley offers. We have nurse practitioners, you know. So she went and she grabbed them and went out to the lobby. We come to find out somebody had a diabetic episode. So it was like, yeah, they had some symptoms. They needed help, but the cure was orange juice. And then the nurses like made sure she was good and everything was good. But this sheriff decided that he needed to go to the microphone to call for a nurse. And it was so crazy. Like, just imagine being there. I don't know how many people were there, but it was a pretty full room. And then all of a sudden the sheriff comes up to the stage. Everybody's like, what's going on? John Carlos handled it really well because he was just like, you are all safe. And then he prayed over, but he didn't know the details yet. So it wasn't until later. So I was going to go up and do a transition shortly after that. And so I texted Taylor. I was like, run out to the lobby and figure out what's going on. And then Dave came up and he told me what was going on. And I was just like, that is the craziest response for that ever. And I guess there were so many people out in the lobby telling him, no, we're good. Like, we know what to do. We have people that are trained for this. And the Northview safety team was there. And so they know what to do. Just crazy.
That is amazing. I feel like that's one of my favorite things working in events is the stuff you don't plan for. That's like just so crazy.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many things like that happen on the fly that you just can't plan for. You can't expect. That's wild. Well, I'm glad they were okay, and I'm glad.
Yeah, everything was good.
Juice,
Everything was good. The OJ was on point. But yeah, it was. But yeah, doing events though, we also were talking. Okay, now, how do you plan for that in the future? Like, because in my brain, I'm going, John Carlos doesn't know our church building, so like he's a professional. He knows what he's doing. But if we had to evacuate, he wouldn't have known. And I'm like, when we host external events, somebody probably needs to be there that knows that, you know?
Right.
So it was just kind of a whirlwind. But overall, the event went really well. It was my first kind of bigger thing with Valley, and so it was kind of fun to be a part of that. And hopefully things calm down now.
Never say that.
Yeah.
But I feel like you got to do a lot of fun things in the lead up to that event because you were like designing billboards and, you know, like you were exercising other gifts that you haven't tried in a while. So
yeah, it was kind of fun. I just learned, I did a 1 month, boot camp on marketing and all that stuff. Like I had to learn a lot of that fast. And so it was really fun to kind of dive into some of those things. And a lot of those things are things that I know I wanted to develop more, even just for my own stuff. And so when the book is coming out and stuff, I just feel like and I'm not going to run billboards or anything, but I now have a way better feeling for all of that world. So it's been good. But what are we talking about today? Sorry, everybody. I hope you're still listening.
They for sure. That's their favorite part of the episodes. Actually, I think it's just they feel like they're hanging out with us.
Well, good.
Yeah. Speaking
good.
For everyone. That's what I'm saying.
You just spoke for everyone.
You can tell us in the comments if you disagree.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, today we're talking about prayer and how our emotions play into that. And you finished a really good book, Voice of the Heart, and that's where a lot of this stems from, is just those emotions that we feel and how they play into our prayer life and how they play into decisions that we make and the way that we live our day to day.
Yeah. Yeah. That book is written by Chip Dodd. And so I read it a few months ago, and it's just been really impactful for me. So it really talks about, I'll just give you the overview of that, and then we'll kind of work backwards. But it talks about like the 8 core emotions that psychologists have identified that we have. And so we'll run through those, but it's like sadness, anger. It's basically the Inside Out characters. Maybe not all of them, but it's these emotions that we all feel, and 7 out of the 8 feel negative, sad, angry, all of those things. But this book really talks about how all of these emotions can be positive if we know where to take them, if we know how to deal with them when we feel them, because sadness actually shows us that we miss something. And so when we go to God and we bring him that, or we have anger, it means that we care about something. And so all of these things kind of are a signal for something that we can bring to God, and he can redeem, and he can do something through it. And so most of us just kind of stuff our emotions, we avoid our emotions, but really it's an invitation to identify those and then actually turn those into prayers. And so I've just seen in King David's life, he models all of this really well, in the sense that prayer isn't pretty in David's life. Like, a lot of the Psalms are not really buttoned up, edited things. They are raw and they're real, and you can see and you can feel almost what he was feeling. And so it's kind of a fun little template that we can kind of walk through. And so that's kind of the idea of what we're going to do today, because I just think, I don't know about you, Megan, but I just think there's a lot of people that maybe, one, struggle to identify their emotions, and then 2, maybe they identify them and know what's going on, but they don't know what to do next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Before we kind of kick it off and go through all of them, how do you feel like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how in tune are you with your emotions?
I would say just throughout this process, I've probably jumped a couple, like 6. I probably went to like 6 to 8. And I think part of it was because I was pretty in tune with certain emotions. But then I think what this has kind of helped me understand is things like sadness do exist in my life. I think I'm a pretty, optimistic person. Relationally, I'm pretty hard to offend. But, anger is one that I'm like, okay, I know I have that in my life, like just being a dad, and things can rile me up, or joy or whatever. But the one that I think was surprising was sadness. And that's like, oh, there's some relationships that aren't the same anymore. And so it's not that I'm mad at them. It's not that there's a beef between us. It's just, it's not what it used to be. And so I think being able to kind of go through this, what we're going to go through today, and kind of actually ask some questions of like, what am I sad at? Like, where is that sadness? And then how do I turn that into prayer? How do I bring that to the Lord? And so I think that's been the process for me. But what about you? 1 to 10.
Yeah, 1 to 10. I mean, right away, my initial thought was like a 7. I think I can identify emotions pretty fast on, like, is this anger? Is this hurt? Like, what's the actual root of it? I think where I struggle is knowing what to do with it. And so I know what I'm feeling. I know why I'm feeling it. But now what?
Right.
How do I get rid of it? How do I move on from it? How do I turn it? Look for a different perspective. I think that is challenging for me in my emotions. And so, I'm intrigued, and I've heard really good things about this book, and I've just never personally read it. But I have everyone that's read it has like my friends talk about how it's made it easier to identify emotions, like in arguments with their spouse or something like that.
Right.
Like, I'm not actually angry that this happened. I'm hurt, or like there's other emotions at play, or I'm sad that this happened. So yeah, I'm intrigued to learn how to like move through your emotions instead of letting your emotions control you and your situation and your perspective.
Yeah, and I think as human beings, we're relational, we're spiritual, there's the mind aspect of that, and so I think sometimes we can kind of push those off. And so to live like spiritually, we need to read our Bible, we need to pray. But because of how God wired us, all those things play together, and we don't realize all the time how our emotional life impacts our spiritual life, or how our emotional life impacts our relational life. I mean, when we are struggling to identify our emotions, just think about how that would affect a relationship with a roommate, for instance. You know, if you can't identify that there is hurt in your life, or that there is sadness in your life because you thought maybe this roommate situation would be one way, or you had this friendship with this person you lived with, and now that friendship seems to be totally different, or you don't see them. And if you don't understand that sadness, you're just going to push yourself away from that person. You're going to tell a story about that person that becomes your reality. When sadness invites connection, sadness invites, I'm going to come to this person and express this. I'm going to come to this person and say, I miss something about our friendship. And so I think it impacts our relationships. It impacts our spiritual life. And so, but I think one of the things that we have to get ahead of in this conversation is, one of the main reasons I think we struggle with this is because we move fast. You know, like we move fast, and especially speaking to young adults, it's like we are going from this place to this place, and I don't think there's a lot of time in between that we can carve, or that we do carve out, that we do set aside, not just to, because I want to also say, like, I've done this with my life group, and that's just a bunch of, 20-something-year-old dudes. And what was fun for that conversation was helping them identify, like, emotions aren't gender specific. Emotions are universal, and talking about them doesn't have to be weird. Talking about them doesn't have to feel like you're in a therapy session. Emotions, when we recognize them and we speak of them as they accurately are, they can become a way to communicate. They can become a way to keep each other accountable and to talk. I mean, I'm kind of going on a tangent, but my spiritual journey, a lot of like accountability was in relation to sexual purity. It was in relation to maybe finances. It was in relation to maybe study habits. But what we've learned in our group is, like, there's an accountability with our emotions too. Like, there's an accountability of when that person continues to react in a certain way, we can actually say, hey, we've talked about this. Like, we know where this is coming from. We know what to do with this. Are you doing that? And so I think there's a whole nother level of discipleship that can come into it when we understand these types of things. So that is a little bit of what we're going to talk about today, which is super exciting.
Yeah. And I think, like, just prefacing this conversation with, no matter where you're at with your emotions, if you're someone that is, like, really in tune with them, you know exactly how you feel, why you feel it, or it's something that's really hard for you to express, there's no shame in where you're at. It's just more of like, okay, let's help give some resources, some handles for you to help identify emotions and how to move forward healthily in a lot of these different seasons, because you're going to feel all of these emotions at some point in your life. If you haven't already, I'd be surprised. So now it's, okay, how do I move forward in these situations when this happens?
Yeah, for sure. And I think one big thing is emotional honesty is the starting line of spiritual maturity. I think really spiritual maturity, we can have that conversation when we can really say, like, yeah, we're being emotionally honest. We're being honest about where we're at and about how we feel about where we're at, and all of those things. And so and another big thing is, this is just something that has kind of become, for me, the biggest takeaway from this whole thing is, if it's in your heart, it belongs in your prayers. And so many times our prayers can kind of stay, Summit's in kindergarten, so he's learning to color between the lines, and that's how our prayers are. We try to keep them in the lines, so we try to make them sound pretty. We try to make sure we do the right thing, And I think what I'm learning is that prayer isn't pretty. Prayer is something that can sometimes actually be messy, and we're going to see that in David's life. But there's times where you go, man, I don't feel great. Like, I feel let down right now, and God, I'm hurting. And you express that, but that God invites that. God actually cherishes that in our relationships with him. So I think that's something that I'm learning. And just a verse that kind of goes before all of this is Psalm 139, 23 and 24, which just simply says, search me and know me, test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any evil way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. And that's just kind of become like the prayer that's easy to pray almost daily. Search me and know my heart, like test me and know my anxious thoughts, allowing God to just kind of speak to us and meet us in that place. And we have to sometimes invite him to reveal those things to us. And so as we give you some language with these 8 emotions, hopefully that will help you as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to jump in first to the life of David a little bit. He is attributed with writing a majority of the Psalms, and honestly, I feel like my perspective with the Psalms for a long time was like, oh, those are just like fluffy and they're so emotional and they're so like, you have one he's on top of the world, he's having the best time ever praising the Lord, and then the next one you read, he's like in the pits just like being hunted, and it's just the worst, and the fluctuation always just confused me for a long time. But I feel like what the Psalms does is really opens the gateway to modeling what prayer can be, that it isn't just a one formula. It's not just praise. It's not just going to him when everything's going well, but it is, the deepest, darkest pain and fear and anger and emotions that you feel that are sometimes harder to express as well are also seen in the Psalms and in the life of David. So I feel like he gives you a lot of freedom to express yourself to the Lord and to say the thing that is hard to say to the Lord.
Yeah. I think too, you pointed out, when you read Psalms, you're like, oh, there's so much fluctuation. And then the more life you live, you're like, oh, like I get it now. Like I had this moment in my work life where I achieved something or accomplished something and I was rewarded for it and it felt so good. And then I blew up on my kids, and we do this, like we go through these things and we receive blessing and then we also experience pain. And so I do think that maybe that's part of what I've been attracted to in this conversation is the fact that like the human emotion spectrum is wide and it is all simultaneous too, where you listening today, there's things in your life that are good and there's things in your life that are not good. There's things that you are excited about, happy about, that are going really well in your life, and then there's more than likely things that maybe they're secret things, maybe they're quiet things that nobody knows about, but they're not going well. And you live in that tension. We live in that tension of this person thinks this about me and I think this about me, and I think this about myself. And then we have to add up to their expectation of me is, oh, they're so this. And then you're like, no, I'm not. But I have to act like that to win their approval, or that's how I feel I do. So this can become so tangled, and it can lead to the other emotions as you go as well. So yeah, let's look at David's life. We won't go through every single example. There's several examples that I've kind of found in just kind of my study of just his life. This kind of came from during the summer. I got to speak at Camp Conquers, and so I kind of turned this thing that had kind of been like a devotional to me and just helping my prayer life. And I was like, how can I teach this to these teenagers? And so I just and we were doing a study of the life of David. And so it just kind of worked out perfectly. But there's a number of occasions in David's life that we have the direct correlation between the moment in his life and then we have the psalm that he prayed. And I think that's kind of rare and that's kind of cool. And so if you're listening and you're driving, maybe just mark some spots in this podcast that you can come back to, because we're not going to read all the scripture. But the first one that I'm going to share is the cave. And so David is pursued by Saul. Saul's chasing him with a spear, and he ends up in this cave and he's hiding. He's anointed king, but he's not the king yet. And the current king is actually trying to kill him. And so he's in this place where he's hiding alone. He finds this ragtag crew of people that are also misfits and outcasts. And he's living outside of his promise and outside of what God has for him. And obviously you could experience how abandoning, like how much you feel abandoned, and he was probably afraid and he was lonely. And so that's from First Samuel 22. But in Psalm 142, David, this is part of it. He says, "No one cares for my life. I cry to you, Lord." Like, I just think that raw emotion, if you could read the whole Psalm 142, you see just different aspects of David's prayer. He starts in this deep pit, but then he comes back and he's like, but God, you are with me. And I think that's kind of like the pathway of prayer is oftentimes when we come in honestly and we can literally tell God, no one cares about me. Like that's how I feel. That's how David felt in that cave. It's like, nobody cares for me. Like I am, the people that I thought cared don't care. The king that was supposed to be taking care of me is chasing me. But it's in that raw prayer that he was able to encounter God. And so like he brought his fear, his loneliness to God in a very raw and real way, and God met him there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. The next example we see of an emotion in David's life is anger, disappointment. How do we see that played out for him?
Yeah, his son Absalom. So this is from 2 Samuel 15 through 17. His son Absalom tries to take the kingdom from him, and he betrays his father, and he tries to basically win the kingdom to himself. He wants to be the king. And so David obviously feels like this high level of his own son is betraying him. And in Psalm 3, it says, many are saying God will not deliver him, but you are a shield around me. And so he's feeling like this disappointment. He's feeling, and he's actually speaking to the rumors that he's hearing about himself. He's speaking to, this is what people are saying about me, but you are my shield. And again, I think that if he would have just wrestled with that and just sat in that, he would have maybe, sunk into depression, or he would have been fueled by anger and he would have taken by force back the kingdom that belonged to him. But I think it's in that rawness, in that realness, in that prayer place that he was able to see, oh, God, you are my shield. The opinions of other people don't stand up to what you are speaking over my life and into my life. And so he waited, and God restored the kingdom and all the things that took place. But again, it's just this anger that he feels, this betrayal that he feels, and then we see him in Psalm 3 kind of process that with God.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. That's so good because I feel like also when we're angry or disappointed, we have a tendency to need to be our own shield. Like we react, fast, and we let things bounce off or fire back. I'm gonna, stick up for myself, and I have something to say on this matter. And I just, as you were talking, I was like, yeah, the Lord really is the best shield. One, the protector of what's externally happening, but also it keeps you soft when he's your shield. It doesn't allow you to have get a hardened heart towards another person or a hardened heart towards a situation or something that you're experiencing. So I think those are just a really beautiful picture that he really is our shield, and we get to stay safe and soft behind his shield, which is really cool.
Well, and just think about this, a lot of the imagery that we have in our relationship with God kind of come from David's prayers, the Psalms is where we're really this language of, you are my refuge, you are my shield, under the shadow, a lot of that language, not all of it comes from David, but a lot of it comes from David and his way of communing with God. And I think when I've looked at my own life, I don't have that language in my everyday vocabulary with God, but because I don't sit there to how do I, God is my shield, God. And again, that time frame, that culture, David had a shield. So he probably was looking at a shield going oh, God, you're my shield, But there's this level of the imagery that we have comes from his rawness and realness of prayer, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's so good. The next emotion David feels is grief, which is obviously really heavy. And we see that played out in a couple different places in the Psalms. But where do we see it in his life personally?
Yeah, in 2 Samuel 12, we obviously know the story of David and Bathsheba, or most of us do, where David saw Bathsheba, bathing on the roof, and he called for her, slept with her, all those things. It led to the death of her husband to try to cover it up. It was a crazy story. But part of that was that the son that was born in that moment actually died. And so we see this grief of him losing this son, this son that was born to him. And so in Psalm 13 and in Psalm 6, we kind of get to enter into David's prayer life through this. And one of the things that he prays is, how long, Lord, will you forget me forever? And I just feel in that place of grief, And if you've ever experienced grief, if you've ever lost something or someone that was dear to you, you probably have felt that, like, God, are you here? You know, like I've been in that situation where something happens, or I lost somebody when I was 14 and my cousin passed away. Like, that was a core thing that I remember from that period of time, is like, wait, God, I thought you were good, and like that was my wrestling, was, does this mean that God's bad? Does this mean that God doesn't care about me? Does he, and I did some wrestling with that, but we see in David, like, he asks the same question most of us ask, is like, God, where are you? Are you going to ever come back? Like, will I ever feel you again? Will I ever hear you again? Like, this feels lonely. This feels alone. And so we see him deal with loss and mourning in a way that we can relate to. But in that place, again, we see the arc of his, and it doesn't happen in every single one of them, but so many of them kind of, I'm drawing with my hand. You can see me, Megan, but I'm starting up high, and then you go down into the valley. But most of David's prayers come back up again. And I think that's what happens when we process these emotions with God, with prayer, is that he doesn't leave us in that place when we meet. He meets us in that place, and he actually shows himself true to us. Because David, his what he left with wasn't, God doesn't care about me, and God doesn't see me, and God doesn't love me. He was able to find God in that place and recognize that wasn't God's character. It wasn't to not love him, and it wasn't to be out to get him or anything like that. So, but it took him coming to God in that rawness and realness for God to meet him there.
Mm-hmm. That was so good. I was just thinking about my own journals and prayers as you were talking. I was like, okay, sometimes I've gone to God and I've left feeling like better, because you take something to the Lord and you lay it at his feet and you walk away, you really do feel better. But then sometimes I've brought emotions or prayers or circumstances to him, and I'm like, I feel the same. Like, it's as if I didn't even bring it to you, and I get frustrated. And as you were talking, I was, the imagery that you just had, I was like, I feel like those prayers that I left feeling the same as when I walked in was because I never went back out of the valley. I never went back to, okay, but who is God in this situation? Just like the reminders of, like, but your word says you're good, but your word says that you're redemptive, but your word says that you are for me, not against me. It's when I feel like I've had times when I've left his, like, quiet time feeling the same as I walked in, still frustrated, still angry at someone, and I've wondered why. And it's because I've forgotten to put him back in authority to say that, like, but I'm not going to be ruled by this circumstance. I'm going to give it to you, and then I'm going to remember who you say that you are. And so it was just really interesting. I was like, oh my gosh, I think that's why I have struggled with that in the past, and maybe you have too, listening to this too. Yeah,
and I think that when we remove the relational component of prayer, we can lose sight of that too. When we just go to God just trying to get our point across, or when we forget that he wants to be with us, that he's a relational God that cares about us, we can tend to not invite him into that place. But when we come to him relationally, it's like, if I have something that I'm struggling with in my marriage, I go to Taylor trying to rebuild that relationship or trying to connect with her. And so I might express, like, hey, this thing happened and this is how I feel. But then there's room for us to talk. There's room for us to communicate with each other. And I think that's what David kind of demonstrates in his prayer life, is that there's room for God to kind of meet him in that place and to speak into him. And a lot of the times I think it's just him recalling and remembering what God's done in his past. And so that actually brings us to the fourth and final one that we'll kind of talk about from David's life. And that's dealing with sin and the guilt and shame of sin. And this is 2 Samuel 11 and 12. David and Bathsheba, we kind of walk through that story. But in Psalm 51, it's this really powerful prayer of confession. David is outed. Nathan the prophet basically says, hey, you messed up. And Psalm 51 is the response to that. And so, again, that's what's fun about this, is that you can see the moment happen, and then you can see the prayer that came out of it. And part of Psalm 51, what it says is, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. And there's other things that he says, like, don't take your Holy Spirit away from me. And there's this there's this you can almost sense like fear in this prayer because he's worried that his relationship with God is damaged beyond repair. But through it, he's also praying like, God, I've got a dirty heart, clean my heart. I am not where I'm supposed to be, but you can make me the way I need to be. And so you just see this whole arc again of him being very raw and very real, but also you see how God meets him in that place, and it gives us a template of how to pray through that too, and really be real and raw about that, because I think sometimes with sin, we're just not really honest about the consequences. We're not honest with ourselves that this does damage, like that. I do need to ask God to rebuild that bridge. I need to ask God, and he's very willing to do that, and what Jesus paid for it. It's not about like I need to get saved again. It's just like, no, I have gone a different way and I need to come back to the path. And so again, this one is another one of those that's just really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so good. Obviously we see it modeled in David's life, like everything that we just talked about, but there's 8 core emotions that we can kind of feel throughout our life, and other emotions stem from those, but there's 8 core ones.
Yep.
And the first that we'll talk about is hurt, is just the emotion of feeling hurt. I think we've all experienced that, but how would you define it?
Yeah, just 1 second backing up. So what we'll do is we're just going to kind of walk through these 8, and so we're not going to take a ton of time on each of them, but what I want you to do as we go through these, we're going to give kind of a signal of what this looks like. We're going to give kind of a couple questions that you can ask yourself, and then we're going to give you just a template prayer, like this is how you can pray. But when you hear one of these and you resonate with it, what I want you to do is I want you to make note of that, and I want you to actually go through this process and just kind of walk with these things and see what happens. So,
Yeah, super good. Super good. So the first one is hurt. The signal or what you might think of with this is something meaningful was damaged for you.
Yeah. Hurt, I think we all can experience, or we can recall an experience of hurt. We can think of a time where, like we say, something meaningful was damaged, where that person's words cut to the heart. That person that we trusted broke our trust. I think this is oftentimes relational, but this hurt that we can feel so often, I think we can so easily sit in it. We can so easily push away from that person. If that's what you think about me, I don't want anything to do with you. Well, that hurt, when we can feel that, when we recognize that, we can recognize that something's damaged. So a couple reflection questions that we can ask is, has someone let me down? Am I skipping over healing? Is there something in me that needs to be healed that I haven't given the space to? Because I think a lot of hurt is what we do is we cover it. We really want to act like it doesn't exist, and so we cover it up. We don't let people see that, and we don't even want to see that. I know just last night our speaker was just talking about her own story, and I think it, for a lot of people, hit a trigger, because as she was communicating these things that happened in her past and then how God's worked through them, I think a lot of people were like, oh, those similar things have happened to me and I've never walked through them. I'm still just living in that place. And she had this sheet of paper, and she basically said, like, my circle keeps getting smaller because all these things have been like rips that I'm losing parts of me in, and God wants to restore that. And a lot of people, I think, live in this small space. And so that's a little bit on hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super good. A simple prayer that you can pray if hurt is one of the core emotions that you're walking through right now is, God, this still hurts, and meet me in it. I think that's really powerful. It's so simple, and it really can just be simple, and it's just the fact of owning it, of saying this still hurts, and not trying to gloss over it and be like, oh, I should have gotten over it by now, or I should have let it go. It's the vulnerability of, God, this still hurts, but meet me in it, calling an invitation to him to walk alongside you in it. And
that might be a parent. That might be something that happened to you in a relationship. That might be, an authority figure that, honestly, this could be even like, I didn't get playing time in high school and I thought I should have. And there's something that sticks with me in that. Like, it doesn't always have to be a big dramatic thing. Like, sometimes the hurt that we hold on to that actually damages us are small things, but that that thing maybe makes you a little bit leery of leadership, of like, nobody understands me, nobody gets my strengths, and so there's things that we carry with us that we don't allow God to really touch because we're not honest about where it comes from. So that's number one. What's number two, Megan?
Number two, loneliness. Core emotion, I think, for everyone. But what's the definition? How would you describe it?
This would be, I was made for connection. You know, a signal for loneliness is that I'm made for connection. And so really loneliness is like an absence of that. You know, we feel that there's something missing relationally, and we feel alone. And so, you know, a couple questions that we can ask ourselves is, where do I feel disconnected? Do I withdraw or do I reach out? You know, when I feel disconnected, do I actually go about that in a positive way, or do I just kind of hold myself in? And so, again, loneliness is not something that I think is rare. Like, I think there's a whole phenomenon in our generation of surrounded but alone. You know, there's been studies on this, that we're the most connected generation, and specifically like Gen Z and Gen Alpha, I think is what it's called, the one coming up now, that's the most connected, you know, online and, you know, all of that, but they're the most lonely, and that depression and anxiety and all of those things are at like all-time highs. And I think that speaks to something too. Loneliness isn't just about like, I don't have people around me and I don't know anybody. Loneliness can also be like, I know people, but they don't know me. And I feel unknown. I feel unseen. And so I think this one, the invitation is to kind of go like, is there moments that you do feel like that you feel like you are alone on an island, even if there's people around you, and being able to identify that. I think that's one that for me was maybe a surprising one in this. And I mentioned sadness earlier, but this one was one of like, man, I felt that, you know, being in leadership at times, you're like, I have so many things happening and relationships that I'm investing in, but there were some core friendships that I felt like just went to the wayside. And there were some core friendships that felt so far and few in between. And honestly, there was times that I felt like when I wanted them, they weren't there. And I don't even blame them for that, but it did create a loneliness. It created like this thing of feeling alone, even because those core people weren't with me in it, you know? And so I think, again, it doesn't always have to be to the extreme that we think of loneliness. It can also be like, man, I feel that in this season right now, in where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The prayer that kind of goes along with that one is, God, remind me I'm not alone. And, you know, that is challenging. It can be hard to feel, but inviting him into, like, I am not alone. I have a God that's with me wherever I go. And asking him to, you know, who are the people around me that are around me that I can invest in, that I can invite into this. And, and being honest with your friends too, of like I'm feeling disconnected from you. Some of my closest friends today are because we had that conversation of like, why haven't we talked in months? Or, you know, why, like, I feel far from you. And without that vulnerability, we wouldn't have been able to move forward, you know, in that. And it's the same with the Lord too. Without the vulnerability with him, we're kind of stuck in always feeling that way. Yep.
Oh, for sure. That's so good. What's number three?
Number three, sad.
So this one, I've lost something that mattered. Sadness can easily be identified, I think, on the surface level, you know, but when we kind of reach down in the heart, you know, sadness, when you cry, it's like, oh, I'm sad, you know, but I think, again, there's just times where we don't actually say those words, like, I am sad, I am lonely. And so I think that identifying that and actually calling it what it is like, there is a sadness there. There is a sadness that opportunity that I had or that I wanted isn't there anymore. You know, and I think when we were doing this in our life group, there was a common one was just like relationships, that they're not where they thought they would be in relationships. And as dudes, that's hard to admit, or that, you know, because it's like, no, I'm good, like I'm solid, but I think just being able to actually go into that place and just be with God and be like, I am sad that isn't the case, that I'm not in the place. And that doesn't mean that we can't have gratitude, that we can't live to the fullest, that we can't like embrace the season we're in. But there's times where we do have to call out that sadness and be like, yeah, something that I desire, something that I had is missing, that matters to me. And so what am I grieving right now? That's a question. Or have I given myself space to actually grieve the things that I am missing? And just allow yourself to sit in that for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like this one is hard to come to terms with, because I think also in like Christian culture, Christian communities, like you're supposed to have joy, you know, that's everlasting, and it's hard to feel like you can admit that you're sad. And like, how do you have the fruit of the Spirit, joy, and be sad? And I think that's hard for us to wrap our brain around, and so then it's hard to admit. And like the gratitude piece of like, but I'm grateful for everything that I have, and we kind of have a, you know, as you were talking, it was reminding me of a conversation I had with a friend, and I was just telling her, I was like, I was telling her something that I was walking through that was really hard, and I was upset about it, but then I was like, but I'm grateful, like this is happening, and this is happening, and like, isn't that so exciting? And she just stopped me and she goes, Megan, you can be sad. Yeah. Like you just have space to be sad. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that I was trying to cover it up, you know, with gratitude or whatever. And so give yourself permission to feel that, and to pray the prayer of, God, be near in the ache, be near in the sadness, and come alongside me. And, you know, there's the verse that like he treasures every tear in a bottle. Like your grief is important, and it matters, and it's felt by the Lord. And I think that's something that's helped me too, is like he treasures every tear, you know, like that means that he's sitting with you, that he's, you know, I always imagine like a little bottle and the Lord like wiping my cheek and putting it in a bottle. It's like he's with you in it, you know, and he treasures it. And
do you know what happens when you really sit with that, and what you just even described is like, that feels like joy, you know, like when you actually go through that process, when you actually sit there and you feel not just like a momentary joy of I'm just gonna slap a Band-Aid over this sadness and, you know, go to a water park, like, oh yay, it doesn't bother me anymore. But when you actually allow the Lord to like reveal, like, you know, I've been there that whole time, like, and that imagery is so crazy to me, of just like he bottles our tears in a jar, like that's scriptural. That's what the Bible says. But I think that just shows like that intentionality of care that he has for us. And that makes me feel joyful, like to know that he does see that and he does care. And I think that's like that true joy that comes out of those things. So that's so good. What's number 4?
Number 4, angry. Which I think we can maybe all relate, or just us.
Yeah. You know, I mean, that's why, I mean, the last couple, Inside Out, just kind of nails on the head, you know? And this one, the red fiery guy, like sometimes he's got the control stick at my little desk, because, you know, I just think this is one where I felt the Lord did such a healing work in my heart in college. And I really do think he did, but this was one that I struggled with growing up. You know, like I was, in a very loving home, but it was a home that emotions weren't really invited to be communicated. And so it was kind of like one of the biggest rules was you can't talk back. And so sometimes talking back was actually communicated as like, oh, I want to talk about this. Like I disagree. And is there space to disagree in a family? And so I would just bottle it up. And so anger would just be kind of like the overflow valve. And it was, you know, and I've also learned that anger in itself isn't bad. You know, don't sin in your anger is what the Bible says. And so anger isn't a sin, but it's an emotion. It's something that we do feel. And so angry is the signal is something isn't right. And so I'm an Enneagram 8, and that's a challenger that is like want justice.
You can come off angry. Yeah. Even if you're not.
For sure. For sure. And so because it's a response of care. It's a response of, and so for me in a work setting, it's like a response of, and I'm not just like punching walls or anything like that. I feel like I've navigated how to express that a lot better, but at the same time, it's something isn't right. And so some reflection, what unknown is making me anxious what's been frustrating me? What do I need to surrender? Are some of the questions that we can ask is what's been frustrating me. And so instead of just living in that angry response, like for me, again, this whole idea of voice of the heart is emotions are a terrible leader, but they're a very good signal. And so with anger, that's been a really good one for me, is realizing like, I don't want to live in anger. I don't want to lead from anger. But at the same time, what I'm angry about is telling some sort of story. It's telling me about what's going on in my heart. And so whether that's something, so if I'm triggered with my kids, sometimes it's not related to them. It's because I'm stressed out. It's because I have a lot on my plate and I'm not giving myself enough time. And so in the morning when I'm trying to get them to school, it's like I'm angry at them, but it's not about them. It's about something in me. And so I think that's been really true for me, is like the signal aspect of it is like, okay, where does this come from? Why am I on edge, or whatever the case is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The prayer for this, God, help me release what I can't fix, which is hard, but a powerful prayer as well.
For sure. We'll kind of go through these last four a little quicker, but number 5 is fearful. Mm-hmm. Fearful. The signal is I feel vulnerable or unsafe. This one is one that I think we've all felt in different ways, maybe fearful about our future, maybe fearful about something in the moment or a place that we're in. But again, asking the question, like, why am I feeling this way? What unknown is making me anxious? Is fear keeping me stuck?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super good. Prayer for fear is God be my refuge and strength. He is our rock and he is the source of all of our strength, and we can't do anything alone or by ourselves. And so,
and I think again, like looking at the things that we're anxious about, again, it's, might be anxious about this test that I have to take, but where does it come from? Like, and inviting God in to reveal that, like, where does this come from? And it oftentimes will stem from basically what you just said, that God be my refuge and my strength, is I think I have to do everything in my own strength. I think I have to have everything right, or I need to create a safe place for myself where it's like, no, I can come to God and he is that. And so it's usually a distance in a relationship with God is the bridge to overcome a lot of fear in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Next is guilt. And kind of the signal for this is I've done something wrong. I think we can feel that. I think about immediately, like when you're a little kid and you're like eating something you're not supposed to, or, I have a nephew, and I remember he was probably 4, and he was in a phase where he would steal chocolate and then he would go behind their couch and eat it. But you knew if he was behind the couch, he was eating chocolate. Like, It was, dude. But he knew what he was doing was wrong, and he felt guilty. And then he'd come around and we'd be like, why were you behind the couch? And then he'd have to fess up, And so it's like the funny examples, but also we still feel it today too. As adults, we feel like we've done something wrong. We've messed up.
Yeah. And so a couple questions. What mistake am I avoiding? What step do I need to take? What mistake am I avoiding? Because oftentimes that guilt, again, we'll push it aside, and really the way that guilt is a positive emotion is that it brings us back to God. It brings us back, and we confess and we say, God, I'm not where I'm supposed to be, but I want to be restored to you. And so again, that kind of stems from that Psalm 51 prayer of David. So what's a prayer for guilt?
Mm-hmm. God, I confess and give me your grace.
Yeah.
So just owning it and then taking it to him, and we're met with grace and we're met with love, which I think is hard for us to imagine when we're in the thick of feeling guilty. And there's so many scripture, especially in the book of Isaiah, where it's like, I've blotted out your transgressions. You have a clean slate. I don't remember the things that you have done in the past. And so we are met with grace and with love.
Yep.
Next up is shame, which is the signal for that is I feel unworthy. Yeah.
So, I mean, if you look back at guilt, I've done something wrong. This one is because I've done something wrong, I feel unworthy. I feel unlovable. I feel that I'm not good enough. And so shame is really about our identity and who we are because of what we've done. And so a couple questions. What do I hope no one finds out? Am I letting shame define me? Just really when we can acknowledge, and again, this one seems crazy that shame can be positive, but when we identify that with God and we we bring our unworthiness or what we feel is unworthiness to him. And then he reminds us, like, you are a chosen, you're a royal priesthood, chosen nation. Like, I love you. I've had plans for you all along, and this isn't who I've made you to be. It invites us back into right relationship. It invites us back into right identity, where we can live from the place that we were created for, instead of living this broken version that we think we've had to settle for because of the mistakes that we've made. And so I just can think of so many times that I've had conversations with people, and even in my own life, where I've just ruled myself out, or they've ruled themselves out. Especially dealing with like ministry calling is one that I've encountered a lot with young people. It's just like, you know, I get that I'm saved. I get that that God, you know, loves me, but I don't think he can use me. Like, I don't think that he would want me to be in a place of leadership or whatever. And I think the next question is like, why do you feel that way? And I think a lot of us have never really asked that question and sat in that question. Like, why do I feel that way? Well, I feel like this thing in my life disqualifies me. And so I think it's being honest with that. So what's the prayer we can pray with this one?
God, speak truth over my identity.
Yeah.
Which is powerful. That's where we go to get, you know, if we need to know who we are, we go to the person that created us.
Yeah.
You know, he knows exactly who we are. He knows, like, it says that his fingerprints are on us. And so,
yeah, I mean, it's just funny. Like, Summit, again, he's in kindergarten, so he's been bringing stuff home from school, you know, and he brought this picture home, and the first question I ask is, what is it? You know, like, because I can't identify it, but he knows. And I think, again, there's times in my life where I'm just like, who am I? Like, what is this? But when you ask God that, when you ask the world that, what do you get back? You get the total wrong answers. You get people that don't understand it. But when you go to the creator, when you go to the person that was waving that colored pencil over the sheet of paper, they can be like, oh, that is the moon. And there's a, you know, whatever. Like, oh, I didn't see that until now. And I think I've had those moments with God where I've been like, oh, I didn't see that in myself. But I've needed you to remind me again and again of who I am.
Yeah, that's so good. All right, lastly, we made it to number 8, and this is glad.
Yeah, so I mean, this is where when you walk through these 8, you're like, why is there only one positive? And again, hopefully we've talked about that enough, of like, all of these can be positive because they bring us back to that right place. But gladness is really, this is what I was made for. There's gladness in our hearts when our relationship is God honoring, when we feel like we're doing what we're created for. And so where have I felt joy? Do I pause to thank God? And so, yeah, what's a prayer we can pray for this one?
God, thank you for this good moment.
Yeah. So I think when we walk through these, and these are all going to be in the show notes, but you can actually look back through these and just wrestle with these. Walk through each and every one of them and ask these reflection questions, and maybe hone in on one or two that you can really journal through and work through this week. But this is how I journal. Like, this is a great way to journal, is like, what am I feeling? That's a heading I put on the top of a lot of journal entries. And now I use this as my language of like, all right, I'm going to walk through these 8 emotions. I'm going to identify the one that I'm feeling, and I'm going to write about it. I'm just going to journal why I feel that way, what that's doing. And then it just, somewhere along the lines, a lot of my journal entries become a prayer. And so, and sometimes it is that low point to that high point, and sometimes it doesn't end in a high point, and that's okay too. But just wanted to give a template for how we can walk through this.
Yeah. So you can ask, what am I feeling? What's it telling me about my situation? And then what would it look like to pray from this place? And so then inviting the Lord into that emotion. Yeah.
And I think, again, you know, this is where, again, if it's in your heart, it belongs in your prayers. And emotions make terrible leaders, but great signals. So sitting with those and learning to identify those and identify what they are invites us into a deeper relationship with God. And so back to Psalm 139, 23 and 24. Search me and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any evil way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Just sit with a journal, pray that prayer, and allow God to start revealing things to you. And just give it a week, give it 2 weeks, and just see how God brings you to a new place of depth. But Yeah. Anything to close, Megan?
Yeah, I mean, just a final reminder, emotions are not weakness. They don't mean that you are less than, but they're your heart speaking, and they are what God is wanting to refine in you.
Yeah. He doesn't need a filtered version of who we are. If it's in our hearts, it belongs in our prayers. We can start there and watch him meet us. So hopefully this conversation has been a blessing to you. Hopefully this podcast is a blessing to you. We just love being able to just enter into your ears for just a brief moment, weekly. But we love you. We can't wait to talk to you again next week. We're all going somewhere.
We might as well go there together.
See you later.